No, it can't be.
David?
Margaret?
I thought you were gone all these years.
I looked for you, or maybe I just never stopped hoping I'd see you again.
You're still exactly the person I remember. And you're still late, even after half a century. You made it.
Do you ever think about where we'll be in 50 years?
50 years? That's forever.
Not if we're together.
Then I don't care where we end up, as long as it's side by side.
Promise me something.
Anything.
No matter what happens, don't forget me.
That's impossible.
Even if life pulls us apart?
Then I'll spend my life finding my way back to you.
In the mid-1970s, long before life became complicated, David and Margaret existed in a world that felt untouched by urgency. Back then, time didn't rush. It stretched like an endless horizon. They met in a way that most great love stories begin, not with fireworks, but with familiarity. A classroom, two desks apart. A moment that seemed insignificant at first, but would later define everything. Margaret noticed him first, not because he was loud or attention-seeking, but because he wasn't. There was a quiet steadiness about David, a kind of calm that made the chaos of teenage life feel distant. And David, he noticed her smile. The kind of smile that didn't demand attention, but somehow held it anyway. It didn't take long before small interactions became something more. Shared notes turned into conversations. Conversations turned into walks. And walks turned into something neither of them could quite define yet. But they felt it. That quiet certainty that this wasn't ordinary. This was something that mattered. Their town was small. The kind of place where routines rarely changed and everyone's story felt pre-written. But with each passing day, David and Margaret began writing something of their own. They found comfort in simplicity, sitting beneath the same tree after school, talking about dreams that felt impossibly far away, imagining a future where they would leave that small town behind together. To them, love wasn't dramatic. It wasn't complicated. It was presence. It was knowing that someone understood you without needing explanation. And in those moments, life felt complete. But the world outside their small town was changing. Opportunities were beginning to take shape. Expectations, both spoken and unspoken, started to press in. David had ambitions that stretched beyond the horizon. Margaret had responsibilities that rooted her where she was, and slowly, almost invisibly, the future they once imagined together began to shift. At first, it was subtle, a missed afternoon, a postponed conversation, a silence that lingered just a little too long. They told themselves it was temporary, that nothing could truly separate what they had built. But life has a way of testing even the strongest connections, and one day, the distance became real. There was no dramatic ending, no final argument, no clear moment where everything fell apart, just a quiet understanding that the paths ahead were no longer the same. They stood at a crossroads neither of them had prepared for, and like many young people faced with impossible choices, they let go, not because they stopped loving each other, but because they believed life demanded it. And as time moved forward, their story became something they carried silently, a memory, a possibility, a question that would follow them for decades. What if things had been different? Life did not stop for either of them. It moved forward, relentlessly, predictably, and without pause. David left the town they once shared. He pursued opportunities that required distance, sacrifice, and a willingness to start over. New cities, new environments, new expectations. He built a life defined by achievement, a career that demanded focus, a reputation that grew over time. From the outside, it looked like success, and in many ways, it was. But success has a way of masking what it cannot replace. In quiet moments, late at night, between accomplishments, there were thoughts he couldn't escape, memories that returned without invitation, a voice he hadn't heard in years, a smile that time hadn't erased. Meanwhile, Margaret's life unfolded in a different direction. She stayed closer to home. Her world became centered around family, stability, and the kind of responsibilities that don't allow for hesitation. She built something meaningful, a life filled with care, commitment, and purpose. She became the person others relied on. the foundation for those around her. And yet, there were moments, small, fleeting, but undeniable, when her mind would wander. A song on the radio, a familiar place, a passing resemblance in a stranger's face, and suddenly, she would remember not just him, but who she was when she was with him. Years turned into decades, lives were lived fully, milestones were reached, families were built, losses were endured, and through it all, that quiet question remained. Not loud enough to disrupt their lives, but never silent enough to disappear. What if? Not out of regret, but out of curiosity, out of a lingering sense that somewhere, in another version of their lives, things might have been different. And as time continued its steady march forward, their paths, though separate, were still moving, still evolving, still leading somewhere. They just didn't know. They were leading back to each other. When they found each other again, there was no need for explanation, no need to fill in every missing detail, because some connections don't fade with time. They simply wait. In the days that followed their reunion, something remarkable began to happen. Not quickly, not dramatically, but steadily. They started to rebuild. Not the life they once imagined, but something new, something grounded in experience, in understanding, in time that had already been lived. Their mornings became shared moments, simple conversations over coffee, quiet laughter that carried the weight of familiarity. Evenings turned into walks through the facility gardens, slow steps, unhurried, appreciating something they had once taken for granted, presence. There was no pressure to rush, no urgency to prove anything, because they understood something now that they didn't back then. Time is not guaranteed, and when it gives you a second chance, you don't waste it. Their connection, once youthful and untested, had evolved into something deeper, something resilient, something intentional. They listened more. They appreciated more. They understood more. And in many ways, they loved better. Their story began to affect those around them. Staff members noticed. Other residents felt it. Even their families, children and grandchildren, watched in quiet amazement. Because what they were witnessing wasn't just reunion. It was proof. Proof that life doesn't always follow a straight line. That sometimes, it circles back. We often think of love as something tied to time, something that belongs to youth, to beginnings, to moments when everything feels new. But David and Margaret's story challenges that idea, because what they found wasn't new. It was enduring. It had survived distance, silence, entire lifetimes, and still, it remained, not unchanged, but unbroken. Their story is not about what was lost. It's about what was found again, not about the years they spent apart, but about the moment they chose to reconnect. Because in the end, love is not measured by how long it lasts in a single moment. It's measured by how deeply it lives within us, even when everything else changes. And perhaps the most powerful truth of all is this: it is never too late. Never too late to reconnect. Never too late to rediscover. Never too late to choose love again. As they sit together now, looking not at the past, but at the present, their story continues, not defined by the years they lost, but by the time they have now. Because after 50 years, they didn't just find each other again. They found something even greater, a love that had learned how to wait. And sometimes, the greatest love stories aren't the ones that happen quickly. They aren't the ones that arrive perfectly, without struggle, without distance, without time pulling them apart. They aren't the stories that unfold exactly as planned, where every moment fits neatly into place, untouched by uncertainty or loss. No, the greatest love stories are the ones that endure, the ones that bend, but do not break. The ones that are tested not by days or months, but by years, by decades, by entire lifetimes lived apart. Because love, real love, is not defined by proximity. It is not limited by geography or circumstance or even time itself. It exists quietly, sometimes hidden beneath responsibilities, beneath new lives, beneath choices that once felt necessary. And yet, it remains, waiting, patient, unseen, but never truly gone. David and Margaret did not live a perfect love story. They did not get the uninterrupted years they once dreamed of beneath that tree in their youth. They did not build a life together in the way they had imagined, hand in hand, side by side, watching each chapter unfold as one. Instead, they lived separate lives. They built separate families. They faced separate struggles. They experienced joys that the other did not witness and endured losses that the other could not comfort. They became strangers in every practical sense of the word. And yet, somehow, they never became strangers in the places that mattered most. Because even as time moved forward, even as the world changed around them, even as their lives took them down completely different paths, there was always something left behind. A memory, a feeling, a quiet echo of something unfinished. And maybe that is what makes this story so powerful. Not that they found each other again, but that they never completely lost each other in the first place. Because the truth is, time doesn't always erase. Sometimes it preserves. Sometimes it protects what we cannot hold on to ourselves. And sometimes it carries something forward across years we cannot control until the moment we are finally ready to receive it again. 50 years of distance, 50 years of wondering, of remembering, of moving forward while still carrying a piece of the past. And then, in a single moment, it all came back, not as regret, not as pain, but as possibility. A second chance, not to relive what was lost, but to experience what still remained. Because love is not a moment frozen in time. It is not something that belongs only to youth, or to beginnings, or to a version of ourselves that no longer exists. Love evolves. It grows. It deepens in ways we cannot fully understand until we have lived enough life to appreciate it. And what David and Margaret found in that assisted living home was not the same love they once shared. It was something greater, something wiser, something stronger. It was a love that had survived absence, a love that had endured silence, a love that had been tested by everything that should have destroyed it, and yet it remained. There is something profoundly humbling about that. To realize that even after everything, after all the years, all the distance, all the separate lives, they could still sit beside each other, still laugh, still talk, still feel that quiet, undeniable connection that once brought them together. But this time, they understood it differently. They no longer took time for granted. They no longer assumed there would always be another tomorrow, because now they knew the cost of losing it. And so they lived differently. They appreciated the small moments, the morning conversations, the gentle walks, the silence that no longer felt empty, but full of presence. They learned that love is not measured by how long you have someone, but by how deeply you choose them while they are there. Every day, every moment, every opportunity. And perhaps that is the lesson their story leaves behind. That it is never too late. Never too late to reconnect. Never too late to forgive. Never too late to rediscover something you once thought was gone forever. Because life does not always give us what we expect. It does not always follow the path we imagine. But sometimes, if we are patient, if we are open, if we are willing to believe that something greater is still possible, it gives us something even more meaningful. Not a perfect past, but a beautiful present, a chance to begin again, not as who we once were, but as who we have become. And as they sit together now, not as the young couple they used to be, but as two people who have lived full, complex, imperfect lives, they are no longer defined by the years they lost. They are defined by the time they have now, by the moments they choose to share, by the quiet understanding that after everything, they found their way back. And maybe that's what love truly is. Not something that never fades, but something that, no matter how far it drifts, always finds its way home. Because in the end, their story was never about the wait. It was never about the years that separated them. It was never about what could have been. It is about what is, right now, in this moment. Two people, two lives, one connection that refused to disappear, and a future, no matter how much time remains, that is finally being lived together. And sometimes, that is more than enough, because the greatest love stories are not the ones that happen quickly. They are the ones that endure. They are the ones that survive. They are the ones that wait until time finally brings them home.